Hey everyone, if you watch the news, you might think that racism is as big of a problem as it's ever been, and the world is totally falling apart. But I'm here to give you some hope and some data because the truth is much better than the media makes you think. So, believe it or not, racism has actually profoundly declined in American society over a number of decades. And I'm going to give you empirical proof of that. All right, here we go. So, the perception is that things are as bad as ever. Racism is everywhere. It's forever. And this quote by lawyer Derek Bell really encapsulates this from 1992. Racism is an integral, meaning like essential, permanent, meaning forever, and indestructible, meaning not going to be taken away, component of this society. And even the title of his book, Faces at the Bottom of the Well, The Permanence of Racism, is really giving away how pessimistic this guy is. And empirical reality really falsifies this vision, thankfully. So the reality is more hopeful. There's been dramatic progress. So hang on with me and check this out. So here's a data on the decline of racism in America, starting with lynchings of African Americans, a horrible crime, which has been documented here by Steven Pinker in his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature. What we see here is the civil rights movement started in the mid 50s. And by that time, the number of lynchings had already gone to basically zero. And this is tracking lynchings from 1882 to 1969. And this is really a dramatic demonstration of that. All right, so second piece of evidence, if we look at hate crime murders of African Americans, we see that by the year 2008, the total number is down to one. Now, this is the absolute total number, not the number per capita, not the number per 10,000 people. This is the absolute number. And Steven Pinker says in a country with 17,000 murders a year, hate crime murders have fallen into the statistical noise. And this is data from the FBI and their hate crime statistics ending in 2008. So that's really good news. Hate crimes are terrible. We don't want any of those. Third piece of evidence, if you look at non-lethal hate crimes, now previously I showed you lethal hate crimes. Look at non-lethal hate crimes. Things like intimidation, simple assault, aggravated assault, also horrific actions done against African Americans. This is also from the FBI hate crime statistics database. What we see here is simple assault has gone down somewhat, aggravated assault and intimidation. So we see a general trend towards decline, which is a good thing. Of course, any amount is too much, but at least there's some progress, and that is important to see. And now, if we look at who is most likely to be a victim of a hate crime, and you compare it African Americans, European Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, what we see is by 2005, in the evolution of the Society of America, African Americans were actually the least likely to be victims of hate crimes. And of course, any hate crime is bad, but that's actually a sign of progress. That's good news. And this is something we should celebrate, that the society has made progress in the way it brings equal dignity to its citizens. Okay. In addition, if we look at how people feel about themselves, this is ratings of self-esteem over time. The effect of African Americans having higher self-esteem started in the 60s and has only gone up each decade. So this amount of increased self-esteem we see going up over 40, 50 years, and that's also a good thing. We want people to have positive regard towards themselves. So that's also a sign of racial progress. Segregationist attitudes in America have declined dramatically. Here's from 1940 to 2000. When you ask people in these research studies, this is from the University of Chicago and the Gallup organization, would you move if a black family moved next door? Or a second question, do you think black and white students should go to separate schools? Answers yes to that question have declined dramatically. That's also a wonderful sign of progress. Desegregation starting some 60 years ago has produced important effects, because remember, when you change a law, it doesn't always change the society right away. There has to be a cultural change, and that's a really good change. So let's also see something that I found the most illuminating was when you look at what do people search for in Google. Because when people are searching privately at home, it's almost a window into their psyche, because they're not being watched by anyone. They might think they're being watched by the tech companies, but they're not being watched by anyone in their immediate environment. So they're a little bit more honest about what they Google and what they search for. And this is a study done of Google searches, which are, as far as social science goes, among the most objective metrics of how people really feel. And what we see is sexist jokes, racist jokes, homophobic jokes have gone down. And the study interval here is from 2004 to 2017. So also signs of progress and good news. Now, in addition, this is a graph from Our World in Data, an amazing website, looking at the equality of political power across social groups. And this is a measure of basically the extent to which social groups of different languages, ethnicities, races, religions, castes are irrelevant to politics or have similar political power. So this is a metric of political equality. We see that over time, North America has increased its share or increased its score on this index over time, especially since 1950, the civil rights movement, and so on. So that's a sign also of progress. That's a good thing. In addition, when we look at studies, social scientific and sociological studies of people's attitudes over time, if you look on the left here, this is European Americans' answers to questions like home sellers can discriminate in who they sell their home to. And you look at the answers to that. If you look at the red line over here, it says from 1972 to 2008, we see the number of people who agree that home sellers can discriminate and sell in whoever they want to, that has gone down dramatically. And if you compare that to the answers that African Americans give to the same question, so if you're an African American person and you are selling your home, do you have a right to discriminate and sell it to somebody who's African American as opposed to some other race? By 2008, African Americans also are saying around 16 to 20% say, yes, I should be able to sell it to who I want if I want to sell it to someone of my own race. And the European Americans are around 30%, 28, 29, 30% here. So the numbers have declined so much that they're getting pretty close to each other even. And the same is true for this other question. Do you favor laws against intermarriage? That has declined dramatically. Now by 2002 here, the European Americans are only about 10% saying yes to that. And by 2002, African Americans are at about 5% here. These numbers are converging in some ways, and that's a sign of progress. In addition, if we look at studies or surveys by the Pew Research Center, which is a very objective research organization, by 2019, African Americans were the least likely to say that diversity in America has a positive impact. They're the least enthusiastic about having many different races and ethnicities in America. So if you look over here, you see different racial groups, white, black, Hispanic, and the question is what percent are saying the fact that the US population is made up of people of many different races and ethnicities, this has a positive or negative or whatever impact on the country's culture. Some people say it's positive, like African Americans say 58% say it's positive, Hispanic 70% say it's positive, white people say 64% say it's positive, but doesn't make much of a difference. African Americans actually have the highest answer to that question. So the progress has been such that we're at a point now where we see African Americans actually being the least enthusiastic about having many different races and ethnicities in America. So I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it's a sign of feeling that immigration is a problem or something like that. But in any case, it's not what you would expect if racism was as bad as it was before. So I find this to be an encouraging metric in addition. So I think the most dramatic change we see probably is in attitudes towards interracial marriage, interracial dating, something that used to be incredibly taboo in 1960. You see only 4% of people approve of marriage between African Americans and European Americans. And now by 2021, it's 94% saying they approve. Similar results we see here on the right side. What percent are saying more people of different races marrying each other is generally a good thing or a bad thing? So if you look here on this right-hand graph and you compare white, black, and Hispanic, the African Americans, 18% say it's a bad thing that more people of different races marrying each other. That's generally a bad thing. African Americans are the most likely to say it's a bad thing. So we've gotten to the point now where we're at this like baseline level where things are flipping in some ways. Although my own view is that interracial dating and marriage is a good thing and it's a sign of a healthy society. But here, the most historically persecuted group is showing attitudes against racial mixing more than other groups. Maybe that means that we're at like this, the levels of racism are so low now that it's like things are flipping here. But in any case, this is another sign, I think, of progress, that historically you would see things reversed. The racial groups would have had reversed attitudes towards these things. So I hope you've been able to see that this has changed over time. Things have gotten better. This is a hopeful message. And if you'd enjoy this, check this other video out or join my free newsletter for more counterintuitive insights. Thanks so much.